Okay, so these are our definitions. We're going to go ahead and we are going to move on to our examples. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at the first example that we have. Okay, so the first example says Alan works for a printing company. It has been a little over 4 years since he was hired. He now makes $54,080 per year. I don't know why that sounds important. I'm going to highlight that. Okay, it's a salary. When he was hired, he was told that he had 5 days of paid vacation time. So that's what he got when he got hired. He had 5 days. For each year that he worked at the company, he would gain another 2 days of paid vacation time to a maximum of 20 days. Okay, so first question. How many paid vacation days does he now get at the end of 4 years of employment? Okay, so I think it's easiest for you guys to see if I make a little chart for this. Okay, so this is going to be his years worked. And this is going to be his vacation days. Okay, now when he gets hired, he immediately gets 5 days. So he hasn't even worked there a year. He hasn't even worked there a month. Okay, he's worked there 0 years, right? But he automatically gets 5 days. Okay, that's what it told us. When he's hired, he gets 5 days. Now, for each year that he's worked, he would gain another 2 days. So when he finishes his year 1, after a full year, he's going to have 5 plus 2 extra days because he gains 2, so he's going to have 7 days. Okay. Once he finishes year 2, he gets to add on 2 more days to what he had before. So he had 7 plus 2 more days. He's going to have 9. Okay, at the end of year 3, he's going to have 9 plus 2 more days. So that would be 11. The end of year 4, he's going to have what he previously had plus 2 more. So that's 13. Now we could keep continuing in this fashion, right? All the way up to 20 days max is what it told us, right? But the question just is asking, what does he have at the end of 4 years? So I already know at the end of 4 years what he has. He has 13 days, okay? So this right here is going to be my answer, is that he has 13 paid vacation days. Okay, that's how many paid vacation days he has at the end of the 4 years. All right, now, the second part of the question, part B, says, how much will he make during the time he's on vacation? Okay, well, we know his total salary. Okay, we know how many vacation days he gets. Let's actually, maybe it's easier if we break this down to a weekly amount. Okay, so how many weeks off does he actually get? What is his number of weeks off? Well, most businesses, you have a 5-day work week. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take his paid vacation days and divide it by a 5-day work week. And so that gives us 2.6. So he's got 2.6 weeks of paid vacation. Okay. Now, we also want to know how much is his weekly salary. We know his yearly salary, but how much is his weekly salary? Well, let's go ahead and take his yearly salary, and we're going to divide it by the number of weeks in a year. So the number of weeks in a year is 52. 52 weeks in a year. When we divide that, we get his weekly salary is $1,040 per week. Okay, now we know that he's got 2.6 weeks off and it's going to be paid at this rate. So let's figure out what his pay during his time off is. We're going to take our 2.6 weeks and multiply it by his weekly pay rate. Okay, and so then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get $2,704. This is what he's getting paid during his time off. Okay, so for this next example on the back side, it says Frida's employer offers her family health care. Frida must contribute 12% of the cost, and her employer will cover the rest. Frida gets paid on a bi-weekly basis, so she's getting paid every other week. And she notices that $88.50 is taken out of each paycheck for her portion of the contribution to the family health care coverage. How much does Frida's employer contribute to her coverage? Okay, so we're going to kind of use like a little formula to help us with this, okay? They gave us a percent here. So we're going to say that that percent, okay, times the total cost of her health care is going to equal her yearly deduction from her paycheck. That's what they're taking out of her paycheck, okay? So if I multiply the percent times the cost of her health care, that gives me how much they're taking out per year from her check, okay? Now, what they gave me was they gave me some information. They gave me a percentage, and they gave me a deduction that's being taken out, but this deduction is bi-weekly. It's not for the whole year. So I need to figure out how much this is for the whole year so that I can plug it in here, okay? Once I know the total cost, that will help me figure out how much her employer is paying, okay? All right, so let's first find out what is her deduction for the year. Well, we know she's getting $88.50 taken out on a bi-weekly basis. Remember, bi-weekly means every other week. So we know that she doesn't get paid 52 times for the year. She only gets paid half of that. So she's getting paid 26 paychecks. So we're going to multiply this by 26. That's going to tell us what is being taken out of her check for healthcare over the course of a year. So this right here, this is her yearly deduction. This is what's getting taken out of her paycheck towards her healthcare. This is what Frida is paying, okay? And we multiplied this by 26 because it told us she was doing that on a bi-weekly basis. So 26 times out of the year. Okay, now that we have her yearly deduction, we can put it here. And we also have a percent that we can put here. Now remember, anytime I use a percent, I'm going to use it as a decimal. So I'm going to write 0.12 times the total cost for her healthcare is going to equal her yearly deduction, which was $2,301. Okay, from there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide to help me solve. Okay, so I'm going to divide by 0.12 on both sides. Okay, and when I do that, I'm getting that the total cost of her health care is $19,175. This is how much her health care costs. Okay. Now, the question is asking how much does her employer contribute for her coverage? So how much is the employer paying for the health care? Well, they're not paying the whole amount because Frida paid this much. So to figure out what the employer paid, I'm going to take my total cost. I'm going to subtract from it Frida's contribution, or what her deduction was. And that's going to give me what the employer contributes. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's do that really quickly. Okay, and I see here that I have the total cost is $19,175. I'm going to subtract Frida's cost. And when I subtract that, I get $16,874. So this is the amount of money her employer is paying towards her health insurance or her health coverage. Okay. Okay, so for number 3, it says Marina works at Washington Performing Arts Center. Her employer offers her a pension. Marina's employer uses a formula to calculate the pension. A retiring employee will receive 1.5% of their average salary for the last 5 years. So they're basing it on average salary for 5 years, okay, of employment for every year worked. So they're also basing it on how many years she's working. Marina is planning on retiring at the end of this year after 25 years of employment. Marina would receive this amount each year until her death. Her salaries for the last 5 years are these numbers. Okay, first question, find Marina's average salary for the last 5 years. Okay, so this is kind of a review. We did some of this pension calculation work in the retirement unit last semester. So remember, to find an average, we're going to add up all of these 5 salaries. And because there's 5 of them, we're going to divide them by 5. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start by adding up all of those. And after we add them, we want to divide by 5, okay? Because there's 5 of them that we're adding together. So once we add these, we get 477,100. We're going to divide that by 5. Okay, that is giving us an average salary, once I divide, of $95,420. Now, one way that I can check to see if this is realistic, this number, is it should be higher than the lowest one, but lower than the highest one. So if you look at your highest and your lowest salaries, it should be somewhere in between those. And it is, right? 95,000, it's kind of in between those two. If you get a number that's higher than 102 or lower than 88,000, you did something wrong. Okay, the average should always be between the highest and the lowest. It should never be above or below either of those. Okay, so now that we've got the average salary, now we can do her pension. Okay, and so it told us for her pension, what they were doing was they were going to take the percent times the average salary and times the number of years she worked. Okay, so let's just fill these things in. Okay, her pension is going to be, we want to use this percentage. So it's 1.5%. Remember, it's a percent, so you've got to change it to a decimal, move that twice, add a placeholder. So we're using 0.015 times her average salary. We just found that. Times her number of years of service. That was given to us up here as 25. I'm going to go ahead and multiply all of those together. So here's what we get. $35,782.50. So that is her pension amount that she's going to be paid every year until her death. Okay, so let's take a look at number 4. Okay, for number 4, it says in Reese's state, the weekly unemployment compensation is 60% of the 26-week average for the 2 highest salaried quarters. Okay, I know that sounds confusing. We're going to talk about what that means. Okay, so a quarter is 3 consecutive months. So we know for July, August, and September, this is what he earned for that quarter. So this was one of his highest quarters of pay. Okay. Then for October, November, December, he earned a total of $9,800. So this was the other highest quarter of pay. So these were the two highest 3-month intervals, okay, of pay. Now, if you think about that, that's 3 months worth of pay, and 3 months worth of pay, that's 6 months. 6 months is half of a year, right? So we're talking about half of a year of pay here, 26 weeks. Okay, that's half of a year. All right, so it says determine Reese's unemployment compensation. So they told me that the compensation is 60% of, which means multiply, the 26-week average. Okay, so his compensation is going to equal the percentage times the average. Okay, now they use a 26-week average. Okay, so here's how we're going to find that. Okay, to find his 26-week average, we're going to take his totals from the 2 quarters. We're going to add them together. And we're going to divide by how many weeks there were in those 2 quarters. So there were 26 weeks. So we are going to divide by 26. Okay, now I know you guys are like, well, why aren't we dividing by 2? Because we're finding a weekly average, okay? This word here, we're finding a weekly average. So if we're finding a weekly average, there were not 2 weeks in 6 months. There were 26 weeks in 6 months, okay? So that's why we have to divide by 26. Okay, so now once we add and divide, we get $724. This was how much he was making per week. This was his average weekly salary for those 26 weeks. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in the average, now that we have it, into this formula. I can plug in the percent from his state into this formula, and that will help me find the compensation. Okay, so his compensation is going to be the percent, which is 0.60, because we're using 60%, times the average, which was 724. And so his compensation is going to be, when we divide, $434.40, and this is per week. Okay, this is how much his unemployment he's going to get paid per week. Okay, so we are going to go on to the last 2 problems, and I'm actually going to do these out of order because I think it's easier if we do number 6 first. Okay, so for number 6, it says Laura lives in the same state as Reese. Laura made the same weekly salary for each of the 26 weeks in her 2 highest consecutive quarters. Okay, she will receive a weekly unemployment compensation check for $570. So it's telling you already what her compensation is. Okay, it's telling you that the compensation is $570. So we already know what's supposed to go over here. Okay, what was Laura's weekly salary when she worked for her company? So they want to know her weekly salary. This is what they're trying to figure out. Okay, now we notice that we're not given a percentage here. Okay, however, she lives in the same state as Reese from this problem up here. So we're going to use 60%, because remember, in Reese's state, we get to use 60%. Okay, so we're just using the same percentage because they live in the same state. So let's plug in what we know to find what we don't know. Okay, we know her compensation, it's $570. That's going to go here. That's going to equal the percent. We're going to write the percent as a decimal, times the average salary. Remember, this is an average weekly salary. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead, we're going to solve. So let's start by, we're trying to solve for this variable, let's just call it A for the average, we would divide, right? Divide by 0.60 on both sides. So your average salary is going to be, once we divide, $950, right? So the answer, remember this is a weekly salary, is $950 per week. Okay, so there's my average weekly salary. Okay, so let's look at this last one, number 5. It says Wanda lives in the same state as Reese. So again, I think we're going to be using this 60% if she's living in the same state. Her weekly unemployment compensation is $360. So they're telling you the compensation is $360, right? So we know this. What were the total 26-week earnings for her highest 2 consecutive quarters of employment? Okay, so what they're asking me is they want to know what this is, her highest 2 quarters added together. They don't want to know per week, they want to know the total. Okay, now if I know the per week, I can find the total. All right, so let's find the weekly amount like we did in the last one, but then we're going to find the total after that. Okay, so to find the weekly amount, we're going to do compensation equals the percent. We're using 60% times the average. Okay, we're going to divide. So when we divide, we are getting for that one that 600 is our average. Okay, this was her average weekly salary. Now, we know that she worked for 26 weeks when we took this average. So let's go ahead and do the opposite of division. Here, let's do multiplication to find our total. Okay, so our total earnings is going to be our average times our 26 weeks. Okay, so let's go ahead and find our total. So our total is going to be 600 times the 26 weeks. So our total is going to be 15,600. Okay, that is how much she made in those 26 weeks.